Okay, so here's my reflection about how I think this course is going to affect me and how I plan on coping with that, and how well I think those coping skills are going, and if I'm going to need to add more, and why, and also my cultural viewpoint on trauma and crisis. So, first of all, I think this course is going to be really interesting, but perhaps equally as difficult in terms of the trauma overload. The emotional stress of hearing about terrible things happening, or worse, being done to people by other people, can certainly be overwhelming. But that doesn't mean I'm not interested, though. I've always, in a way, wanted to hear these kinds of things, like, I don't know, ever since I was young, like reading books about like survivor stories of like war and genocide, and um, I watch a lot of true crime, regardless of my mood. So I there's something about it that really interests me, um, and I think it's important to understand not only how someone can do terrible things to another person, but also, more importantly, how someone survives horrible trauma happening to them. In terms of my stress, though, I'm afraid there'll be times when I'm actually less than empathetic because I'm so stressed out by practicum and other schoolwork, and other life stressors. I can tell my empathy is lacking when I start to think things like, they don't really have that diagnosis, they need to try harder, or, oh, they have that diagnosis, yeesh. I think that happens because I get tapped out emotionally, and it's easier to write things or people off than to have compassion when you're overwhelmed. Lacking empathy will be a cue for me, though, to dial back and like dial back my stress load, like maybe cutting back hours at work. That's the first thing I think I'll try. I'm more concerned, though, about how certain topics will trigger me, and when I feel triggered, I often go to a place of being like angry, irritable, frazzled, stressed out. Um, when in reality, those things like make me sad and scared, like I'm not a big tough guy like I might initially react like. For instance, like I have pretty significant trauma from an ex boyfriend who has BPD, and he brutally assaulted me, like close to 6 years ago. And because of this, I get irritable when discussing BPD clients, in particular BPD rage or whatever it's called. I know this is a bias, but I want to be honest because it's something I know I'll have to process through if I want to work in this career. Still, currently, when I hear BPD, I think of all the worst things about him. How he felt entitled to hurt me physically just because he felt abandoned. How crazed his eyes looked during it. How he acted entitled even throughout the whole court process. Like, even after he was charged with felony strangulation, and after hearing my victim impact statement, he spoke to the judge and just said things about how hard it's been for him. So when I think of BPD, I just think about these like terrible aspects of him, and I don't know how much of those are truly BPD traits and how much are just like he was an asshole domestic abuser traits. I just like that constant fear. He also had the constant fear of abandonment, and he would like pick fights. And I mean, I've known other people with BPD too, and they also had these traits. Like it seemed like they were always finding like a reason to be offended where there wasn't one, and like demanding that people see their side of things. So I don't know. I know from studying BPD, though, that many with the diagnosis actually have a significant trauma history. So, learning about trauma in this class might help me gain more empathy for this diagnosis and be able to see how trauma led to the behaviors seen in adulthood. More so, though, I'm wondering how it'll affect me in terms of my own trauma, like from this assault, or the fact that I had two abusive stepdads growing up, or other things that I don't feel comfortable bringing up right now. Will I like feel increased empathy for these towards these types of people? Or like, will I have more increased empathy instead, more likely for like people that have gone through the same things if we learn about them? Like, probably, yeah. And I'm wondering too, but like I'm wondering how I'm going to react when I'm super triggered. Like, am I going to go into the hallway to take a deep breath, to like splash my face with water? Or will I be able to sit through it neutral looking like I want to be able to do with future clients? So, I don't know. Similarly, when I face what I perceive as even slight anti-Semitism from someone, or even just hearing about it secondhand, my instant reaction is anger. Even though it makes me feel a host of feelings other than just anger, like disappointment and definitely fear. I'm wondering how I'll react to hearing about trauma inflicted on someone because of their religion or culture or ethnicity. The world has become increasingly anti-Semitic in the past year, and the day in and day out, I see evidence on my social media and on the news of this, and it does make me stressed out. How could it not? I feel like I'm existing in a world that's increasingly becoming more hostile to people, to me and people like me, simply because of who we are. So being in that position, maybe it'll give me, again, like maybe more empathy for people going through something similar in the past or currently, but it's still very stressful. So acknowledging that, like my past trauma, the ways I might be triggered, my biases, and just knowing that like every week we're going to be going over really difficult topics. Here are some of the ways I think I'll be able to cope with the material we discuss in class. First and foremost, I think I'll need to sometimes process what we discuss in this course, whether that be with my therapist, a classmate, my practicum supervisor, my partner, or even in my diary. Even a brief discussion with someone else, or a like little self-reflection can be super beneficial for lifting the emotional load of discussing traumatic topics. I think I'll rely heavily on my own therapist, probably the most, as she specializes in trauma, which is why I went to see her like 4.5 years ago when I was dealing with the trauma from from the assault I was talking about. And not only does she help me like as a client, she's really helped me conceptualize how I'll deal with these topics as a therapist too. She's like basically been a mentor for me through this grad school process. For instance, she and I have talked quite a bit about what I'll do when I'm faced with BPD clients, especially male ones. I might not take BPD clients, male ones at least, at all. And I think that's just a form of self-protection. Similarly, I might just refuse to work with domestic abusers in general, across the board. We'll see though. I might grow enough that I can face those clients and be able to work with them effectively, just probably not right away. I currently see this therapist once a week, and I think that'll really be important to keep doing while taking this course. The only problem is that I see her on Thursdays at 1, and our class is Thursday nights. So it'll be like we're discussing things like a week late, and then that same day I'll get like a new thing to talk to her about that I'll need to wait a whole week about. But I'll make it work. I do that all the time with things that happen right after our appointments that I have to save up till the following week. So, um, yeah, it'll be okay. I also currently have a few friends in the program who I feel comfortable talking to about these difficult topics. And I hope to make even more friends and connections in this current class. So hopefully, when I discuss these topics, it's not just like with my fiance who might get triggered himself or just might not want to hear depressing stuff all the time. And that's understandable. Even my mom is a great resource for talking about these things because she's an inpatient psychiatrist, and I think I got my being into like true crime and heavy stuff gene from her. We were always like watching Law and Order SVU growing up, even when I was like way too young to be watching that, like 8. She seems to be able to like discuss these topics just like endlessly without it bogging her down too much. And she's just like the queen of compartmentalizing, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. She loves discussing my grad school coursework with me anyways, just as it is. So I'll continue to lean on this relationship too to help me process through the difficult topics we discuss. Another way I will cope though is through exercise. I don't really exercise heavily, but I do take 30 to 45-minute walks every day. So I think it'll be essential to keep doing those, as well as to keep processing through, to keep up with those, to keep processing through these heavy topics that we discuss in class. And actually, I'm going to be starting to work with a personal trainer. I won an award for 3 months of free personal trainer tutelage. So I'll be working with a personal trainer for free every week for 3 months. And I hope they kick my butt. There's something about like that more vigorous exercise of like working up a sweat that I think clears the mind a little better than a gentle little walk does. Although walks are good. I'm a little concerned about exercising harder and my MS fatigue and having the energy to actually do those exercises. But I'll certainly try my hardest. Not to mention I'm getting married in a year and I want to try to get in as good a shape as possible for that. So we'll see how this goes. So other than my walks that I'm already doing and then working for a personal trainer the next 3 months, I'm also going to try to keep my entertainment light, like less true crime that I'm obsessed with, more comedies. Like honestly, I watch like, I don't know, don't pathologize me, but I watch like 90% true crime. Isn't that awful? It's all like documentary style about just murder, rape, family annihilators, like the worst of the worst. I don't know why I like watching this stuff. I'm a little sick in the head, I guess. But I definitely believe that our entertainment can affect our moods, like lifting or dampening them. So during the course of taking this class and during practicum, I think it's just wise for me to switch from all this true crime to the lighter things I like The Office or 30 Rock or Old Project Runway. I know some of those seasons are like for free on Hulu and Amazon Prime and stuff. So there's no excuse, is what I'm saying, to change my entertainment a little bit more. The same goes for the music I listen to. I mean, I don't listen to like the most depressing stuff, but I listen to like grungier stuff, like angrier alternative punk adjacent bands from like the 80s and 90s. And I think I could just go with a little bit more pop and, just keep it light a little more, knowing that I'm going to be inundated with just really traumatic, heavy stuff from this class and also probably in practicum. Lastly, other than the things I'm currently doing and plan on doing, I think it'll be a good idea to meditate or do mindfulness, particularly or after particularly difficult class sessions, as well as to add more music making into my life. I know there'll be days where there'll be some topics that just linger heavier on my mind than others, and I'll need a way of like decontaminating myself, so to speak. I have a 25-minute drive home though, so I can easily listen to meditations, podcasts, etc. That can achieve this like calming, decontaminating effect for me. I know that there's tons of great tracks on Spotify, YouTube, lots of great channels. So, there are definitely resources. And you know what, God forbid, like maybe some of those drives home, I'll have a good cry. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I love a good cry. It can be very cathartic. So I don't mind. And I'm just kind of like already going into this semester thinking that might happen. That's okay. As long as I'm driving safely. Regardless what I do on that drive home though, I think it's just going to be a really good alone time period for me to have after each class session, especially because it'll be so close to bedtime. And I don't want to like dream about the horrible things we discussed in class. The other coping skill I like briefly mentioned a few minutes ago that I want to get into more is adding more music and like maybe even more art into my life. At my core, I would say I'm a musician more than anything else. Yet I let that slip away when life gets too stressful or busy. Like I sang in choirs from the time I was like 7 until a few years ago. I've written music my whole life, and I went to a performing arts high school. I was in 3 choirs in college, including an a cappella group that was very fun and very dorky. I remember being stressed about coursework in college and, therefore wanting to skip rehearsal for one of these choirs. But every time I would go, I was so glad I went. It was like time stood still. And the only thing I cared about was making the most beautiful music I could with my peers. It was really magical. Singing is such a good stress reliever. The forced deep breathing before you sing a line, the melody, just hearing a melody, it just takes your mind to a different place. So I think I could really benefit from taking the time to sing and play piano. I do that too. A few nights a week, or at least singing in the car on the way home from class. That's like going to be the bare minimum if I'm not listening to a podcast or a meditation or whatever. How do I think my current wellness strategies are at managing my stress? Currently I don't feel that stressed out in life, even though like maybe I should. I'm taking 3 classes and I'm doing practicum, but it hasn't really started up yet. So I think that's part of why I'm not feeling stressed. It's been a really slow start, which I'm a little nervous about, but that's a tangent. And I work 40 hours a week. Luckily I make my own hours, so I just find little pockets of time here and there throughout the days that I don't have class, or even the days I do have class, just like, here and there. And I'm planning a wedding. And I'm trying to I guess there are things that could be stressful, but I don't feel that stressed out right now. But I just know that's going to change once practicum starts up. And so even though I think my current strategies have been effective, I'm pretty sure I'll need to amp them up to be effective for my stress level this semester. So far, processing with my peers and taking daily walks have been my favorite wellness strategies. I'll definitely still lean on those throughout my time in this course and in practicum. But I'll also beef up my coping strategies in order to deal with the topics we've discussed in this course, as well as the stress of practicum. I'm hopeful that I'll be able to engage in all these coping strategies I talked about earlier, but I would be lying if I didn't say I'm a little fearful that some will just be difficult to manage with my MS fatigue. Like sometimes I don't want to do anything, like anything. Like it's hard to think a thought. So heavy exercise and journaling are going to be ruled out when I'm really fatigued. But maybe singing that'll be good then, or just listening, just resting and listening to a guided meditation. Those will be better for days when I'm facing fatigue. Usually I handwrite in my journal, and my handwriting's so bad when I'm fatigued. It's just like there's not a point of even trying. And in terms of heavy exercise, maybe I'll engage with it with my trainer once I'm actually like face to face with them. But I'm worried about even making the appointments because of my fatigue. And times like that, I'll just, again, have to rely on those less physical methods of coping more heavily. Like talking to others, watching a show, a lighthearted one. Okay, and then lastly, I want to talk about how I think from my cultural context, my beliefs of trauma and crisis, how they'll hinder my process of self-care or enhance it, and how. So culturally, like coming from a Jewish perspective, my beliefs about trauma and crisis are that it's our job as human beings to help each other through crises and traumatic events. Everyone is called upon to lessen the burden and brokenness of the world. This concept is called Tikkun Olam. I don't know, you might have heard of it before. And it's part of what drove me into the helping professions. Basically, it's not just for a chosen few who have caretaking personalities to make this world a better place. It's up to everyone. I wouldn't say I have a particularly caretaking personality, but I care. There's a difference. I'm not perfect, and I've made many mistakes, especially in active addiction. However, other than making formal amends to people, I'm making a living amends to people, and that's tied to this concept of Tikkun Olam. I'm just trying to leave the world a better place than how I found it. If I can say that on my dying day, then I'll know I've lived according to my values. There are other concepts in Judaism that speak towards caring for oneself as well. One such concept is the law of Shmirat HaNefesh, which literally means to care for the soul. So there's also laws about taking care of your body, which I said earlier will be one of my coping skills and goals. But this concept of Shmirat HaNefesh really speaks to self-care and taking care of your emotional, spiritual self. And not in a religious way, not through prayer, but just through taking it easy and having a support system and stuff like that. I'm just really lucky that my culture already has and upholds these concepts, so it's not like a tug of war between what I feel is healthy and right to do versus what my religion and my culture say about the matter. I'm not so religious that I would feel bad going against my religion. Like, don't get it wrong. Like, I was raised Reformed Jewish. Like, I didn't keep kosher or anything. Like, I'm not that religious. But I just like that it's aligned. One way, though, I am worried about how my process might be hindered by my cultural values or whatever is this cultural concept of bearing witness to people's suffering, which, I mean, we'll be doing in this class by discussing terribly traumatic things all the time. And, you know, really discussing it, not turning away, not turning a blind eye. You know, Jews, we don't look away when faced with the horrors that have been done to us. We look at them with our eyes wide open, and we tell others about them as well, even though some people don't want to believe that those things happen to us. You know, like, we fight for recognition of our suffering, and I would say to an extent to other people's suffering too. You know, lots of Jews have been champions for social justice causes and like helping like the Black community during the civil rights era. That's an example. Joining the queer liberation movement, stuff like that. But, like, you know, especially when it comes to like our own suffering and bearing witness to that, that is something that I've been concerned about even before taking this class. Because ever since the Hamas terrorist attack in Israel on October 7th of last year, I feel like I've constantly been bearing witness to my people's suffering. I can't stop. I can't look away. Even when it causes me immense pain. Every day I go on Instagram or check the news and see posts from Jewish sources detailing a new horror every day. Every day a new hell. New evidence that they found of atrocities committed on my people, more hostage deaths, more terrorist attacks all over the land of Israel. It's a nightmare. Not only that, but you know how many people I've had to unfollow this past year because of ignorant, offensive things they've posted about this conflict? A conflict they know so little about that, unfortunately, I've had to know about since I was a young child. Chanting things that literally call for the death and destruction of my people, all under the guise of freedom. It's just awful. I'm working with my therapist right now on how to balance this deep desire to bear witness while also protecting my own mental health. And we've discussed things like limits on social media usage, limits on watching the news, etc. Though I see value in this, of course, so far I haven't been able to limit my social media use. I'm like always afraid I'm missing something important and that I need to know because it's happening to my people. I think especially with this class and practicum though, push is just coming a shove, and I'm going to need to find a way to not be constantly inundating myself with news about this conflict. That doesn't mean I love my people any less. It just means I have to protect my soul, just as we're commanded to do. And I know me hurting for my people doesn't change any of what they're going through. And unfortunately, no matter how much I share on social media about it, I can't change the minds of people who don't want to open their eyes to other aspects of this conflict. I have to protect myself so I can do well in this class, in practicum, be an effective therapist, and also just to be like happy and healthy. So that's kind of how I want to end this self-examination process about where I'm currently at with my coping skills, and what I think I'll need to be able to cope with the traumatic topics we discuss in this class. And I have to say, even though like I have my own baggage, and certainly I'm really, really excited for this class. I think I'm going to learn so much, and that's why this is my third class with you. So thank you.